Greetings everyone, this is Jed Shlackman. In this video I'm going to speak about the topic of Ascension, the mystery of Ascension. Ascension is a subject that I encountered many years ago around the time that I was first exploring many different metaphysical and spiritual texts. This idea of Ascension is one that comes with a variety of perspectives. Different explanations are provided for what is being discussed or presented. If we look at this in a very simple or basic way, the word ascend means to rise or climb. And in spiritual terms, when people speak of ascension, they're usually speaking of a rise in consciousness, some type of raising or elevating of one's energy or level of awareness. This can be looked at in more than one context. As we shift our energy and our consciousness here during our human lifetime, we can actually ascend in terms of our level of understanding or awareness. Our rate of vibration may elevate, our aura, our field of energy might expand. So we're already going through some form of ascension or elevation process in that regard. However, in a variety of metaphysical teachings or writings, you'll see a discussion of some type of mass ascension that is expected to occur for humanity and or for this planet Earth. I would encourage each of you who are researching or exploring this idea to not get too hung up on it, to not be overly worried or concerned about what is actually going to happen. Whatever processes of ascension may occur are actually occurring or being experienced within the illusion that we are existing separate from the ultimate spiritual source. If we understand that everything in creation is happening within this infinite consciousness of the Prime Creator, of what we could call God or the Great Spirit or Source, then all that's really ascending is our point of awareness or consciousness within that greater whole, within that spectrum of experience. If there's a process of ascension, that implies there is also a process of descension, of that ultimate source sending projections of itself down into deeper levels of density to gain a greater depth of experience. So even if we're experiencing an ascension where we appear to be rising up to reunite, to reintegrate into a greater realm or level of consciousness, there can simultaneously be these extensions of that creative source descending down toward this same dense level of experience for further adventures, for further explorations of this realm of duality or third density. If there is no time, ultimately, there's no pressure, nothing to worry about. All experiences are following the path or course that they need to, all being accumulated and integrated, and we're all just here to embrace this journey. It's fine to be curious about what's happening at different stages or junctures of our earthly experience. And this is where these different teachings and ideas about ascension have come to people's attention, have drawn a lot of interest. back in the late 1990s, one of the early sources that I encountered in reading about this was the writings of David Wilcock, who has now become quite well known, although at that time he was just another person sharing his experiences and research on a website. His website at that time was called Ascension 2000, and his research and understanding of this idea of a mass ascension event led him to think at that time that it might be related to the year 2000 or to the year 2012, the significant date in the Mayan calendar cycles. So I'm going to read you now some of what Wilcock had written at that time as a reference point to see how his current ideas may correlate with that or may differ from what he was thinking at that time. In this document here, which is a printout from his website back in 1999, we have the introduction to what he called Convergence, the books that he was beginning to write at that time. And over time that evolved into a trilogy of online writings that he has distributed for free. The first one being The Shift of the Ages, then The Science of Oneness, and Divine Cosmos, which actually became the name or title of his newer website, Divine Cosmos. This short piece is designed to give the basics behind Convergence, a body of metaphysical research that many people feel has profound, incredible implications for all of us here on Earth. It all begins with my initial foray into the bizarre world of UFOs and exotic physics, which came about in 1993 when I had obtained direct information that came from a college professor who was an ex-NASA insider. My informant spoke directly with this professor, who asserted that the United States had secured crashed alien discs and was reverse engineering their technologies. During the same time period, I started documenting my dreams on a daily basis. Within the next 3 years, I gradually developed my way into a direct trance-based verbal connection with the intelligence behind the UFO phenomenon that I named the Dream Voice. For those of you that have followed Wilcock's work for a long time, you'll know that he was giving these readings where he would receive the information for a client in the dream state and then record it the next day and have that information available for them. Continuing now with his introduction to Convergence. As with any good system of trance-based psychic information gathering, I have had repetitive, ongoing future prophecies and confirmations that the data I receive is highly unfiltered by the conscious mind. I have tried as much as possible to preserve quality by removing any of my conscious thought from the process as it goes along. The resulting sentences themselves are often quite unusual in their structure and wording, using a great deal of metaphysical and/or cryptic language similar to the readings of Nostradamus or Edgar Cayce. And of course, as an aside, David Wilcock considers himself to be connected incarnationally to Edgar Cayce. There's even a book called The Reincarnation of Edgar Cayce, written about this case of how David Wilcock has such a striking connection to Edgar Cayce and the Cayce readings. I have also documented accurate sentences and sentence fragments that came through in foreign languages that I have never studied consciously. The products of this work include a 3,000-page corpus of direct messages for humanity that these intelligences would seek to have us understand which is continually being posted on my website. Wilcock continues here, perhaps most importantly, I have also used this technique to help guide the processes of my scientific research. I have compiled the results of all of this information together into a 300-page magnum opus called Convergence 1999 and Beyond. It is currently published freely at this same website, www.ascension2000.com. And that convergence material, as I mentioned, evolved into the trilogy of The Shift of the Ages, The Science of Oneness, and Divine Cosmos, which can now be found for download on the divinecosmos.com website. Briefly, convergence comes as a result of understanding that our solar system operates in 25,920-year cycles, and that at the end of each cycle is a frequency or energetic shift. These shifts affect the energetic structure of the Earth or the global grid by forcing it to realign, and hence you have the pole shift phenomenon that is often referred to in metaphysical circles. As indicated from the Mayan calendar and many other sources, we are now into the end phase of this entire 25,920-year cycle of human civilization. And we can expect a fantastic and highly exciting transformation of ourselves and our planet in the very near future as a result. Ancient cultures divided that cycle into astrological ages, where we would go through all 12 signs of the zodiac in that cycle of close to 26,000 years. The current age that we're in our Western astrology is referred to as the age of Pisces. And the next age that we're supposedly on the cusp of entering is the age of Aquarius. Back to the introduction to convergence, we have also rediscovered the underlying physics of these multidimensional systems in the universe. Most importantly, we come to understand that the dimensions are actually frequencies of light, sound, and geometry, and that they are organized into an octave structure. So each dimension has a color in the visible light spectrum, a sound in the musical octave, and a geometry. The geometries in question are all sphere-based harmonic structures, commonly known as the Platonic solids. These are very well known in sacred geometry. The simplest three-dimensional shapes in the universe. For each of the Platonic solids, all sides, faces, and angle ratios are identical, and they will all fit perfectly inside of a sphere. In the book, we have shown how we could then think of these unified geometric frequencies as being called consciousness units. In other words, we can visualize a symmetrical point or sphere of light that expands equally in all directions. What is actually expanding outward is what the physicists refer to as superstrings, and we now know from consciousness research that these strings travel in spiraling motions, or as the physicists put it, the strings vibrate. The term consciousness units is found in metaphysical teachings, and David Wilcock has relied a lot on the law of one teachings. He brought those together with other spiritual texts such as the Seth material, the writings of Walter Russell, and others, and compared it with the findings of modern physicists who research the ether, torsion fields, the zero-point energy, and subjects such as those. Back to this introduction, as the strings of light continue to expand and vibrate in a spiraling motion from a unified center point, they will retain the shape of a spherical field, since they are all moving at a simultaneous speed, the true unit velocity or speed of light. However, certain force points or nodes will form where there will be greater strengths of energy concentration due to the strings overlapping each other at set harmonic periods. The straight lines of force that are formed as these nodes pull on each other then assemble into each of the sphere-based platonic solids as you progress through the frequencies. Physicist Buckminster Fuller demonstrated this same vibratory principle through numerous experiments of his. To understand the relationship between geometry and vibration, I would encourage people to research cymatics, C-Y-M-A-T-I-C-S, in which sound vibration is used to create geometric forms. So there is a significant correlation or relationship between geometry and vibrational frequencies. And so the structure of the consciousness units could be thought of as an expanding and contracting sphere of light that ratchets through different geometric frequencies along the way. The speed of this ratcheting motion is unbelievably fast, at least to us in the third dimension. It occurs at the true speed of light, which is actually much faster than what we can measure in third-dimensional space-time. We then must visualize the fact that even though each unit is constantly pulsating through the entire octave of frequencies, any entity living in a certain focus or a certain dimension will only be aware of their own particular frequency. And I want to pause there and point out that each of us perceiving our reality through this filter of the third dimension are only seeing things within this narrow frequency band, and we're not even aware that our own self, higher aspects of our own being, already exist through all the different levels of the octave of densities or existence. So there's that creative source that we're already connected to, and any ascension that may occur is just our field of awareness reverting back to one of those higher planes of existence. It's not that we've left there, we've come here, and then we go back. We actually simultaneously exist as fields of energy and consciousness on all those levels. However, right now, in this human experience, our point of focus is merely here in this third dimension or density level, depending on how one might label this. In other words, we in the third dimension have the color yellow, a tone of the note G, which is the tone he's referring to here. I've also seen the note E be the one that would be representing the third level. For 360 cycles per second and the geometry of the octahedron were two Egyptian pyramids connected at their bottoms. Although the consciousness units making up our physical reality continue to pulsate through the entire octave, we will perceive only those moments when the consciousness units are in the third yellow geoctahedron in quotes position. We simply do not vibrate fast enough, normally speaking, to detect the other dimensional frequencies existing all around us. It is similar to a fluorescent light bulb, which is off as much as it is on, but it pulsates so quickly that we only perceive the visible continuous light. Of course, some of us are able at times to expand our perception, so there are people who see spirits in the fourth density or dimensional level, and those are what people often refer to as psychic or psi phenomena. We all have the innate capacity to access that but it takes sometimes some practice to develop those skills. Once we have visualized the pulsating spherical nature of the consciousness unit, the next step is to realize that the consciousness units are not bound by our normal considerations and prejudices concerning space, since they exist outside of space-time as we know it. What this means to us is that they can be of any size imaginable, from the subatomic to the size of a planet, solar system, or galaxy. Indeed, any formation of consciousness that has crystallized into matter will be ruled by the harmonic principles of the consciousness unit. This also includes the human body with its 7 main chakras, or energy centers, each corresponding to a color, sound, and geometry in the octave. This reminds us that everything is consciousness. Therefore, the planet has its consciousness, the solar system, the star, the sun has its consciousness, the galaxy itself is something that could be considered a unit of consciousness. And so it has its own intelligence, its own intention or purpose for existence. Therefore, when we see a spherical planet, what we are actually seeing is an organizing structure for these consciousness units. And here, Wilcock refers to Richard Hoagland. R.C. Hoagland and the Enterprise mission, which is Hoagland's website, has identified the energetic presence of the tetrahedron on most of the planets throughout our solar system. Through such vortices as the great red spot of Jupiter, the great dark spot of Neptune, but all 5 of the platonic solids must be considered equally. As the consciousness unit naturally expresses all of the platonic geometries within itself, so too will a planet display lines of force that correspond directly to the positioning of these platonic solids, starting from the first level. And here he lists for each of these levels the corresponding geometry. So for the first level, you have the sphere, the second level, the icosahedron, the third level, octahedron, fourth level, star tetrahedron, fifth level, the cube, sixth level is the dodecahedron, seventh level is the icosahedron, and eighth, the sphere. So the cycle completes and returns back to the sphere. This hierarchical system of vibrations does indeed express itself very well on Earth through what we know as the global grid. Convergence goes into the incredible proof that this grid actually exists and that the ancients were quite adept at harnessing its multidimensional energies through building pyramidal structures upon its lines and intersection points. The book also shows incontrovertible evidence of how this grid shapes the structure of continental landmasses, island chains, oceanic rifts, and many other areas. Some of the discoveries of grid circles are highly startling, as once you have seen how their outlines are traced on the surface of the globe, it is impossible to ever view a map of the Earth in the same way again. The discovery of these grid circles is essentially brand new, never before seen in print. Furthermore, Convergence covers the works of Bruce Cathy, who discovered the fundamentals of this grid solely through the tracking and analysis of the flight paths of multitudinous UFO sightings. Apparently, our extraterrestrial brothers use these grid lines for navigating on the Earth, since the lines are directly visible to them from higher dimensions. From this extensive grid research, Cathy has rediscovered many aspects of hyperdimensional physics that are highly interesting to the world's secret governments, but almost completely unknown in the public sector. Cathy's discoveries include stunning new information about the harmonic principles behind all matter including the octave-based organization of the atom, again demonstrating the properties of the consciousness unit. We now know that the consciousness unit is the underlying structure behind all physical matter that will continue to become more and more widely understood as physicists study what are now being referred to as supersymmetric particles. And as we already stated, we now have extensive evidence that a solar system and a galaxy are other arrangements for a consciousness unit as well. This is why the spacing between the planets in our solar system corresponds precisely to the diatonic ratios found in the musical octave, as well as why the galaxy is a set of spiraling arms emanating from an energetic multidimensional center point or black hole. The harmonic principles and properties of the consciousness unit govern the structure and organization of these dynamic astronomical entities. That brings us back to the question of cycles that we had originally discussed. The work of John Major Jenkins in Maya Cosmogenesis 2012 conclusively determines that the Earth's precessional wobble of circa 26,000 years is actually timed by the Earth's relative position to the center of the galaxy. Jenkins connects this to the Maya, showing how they had elaborate rituals and symbolic proofs for this connection. The Maya associated this cycle with the changing of ages and root races of humankind. Jenkins shows us that these precise turning points in the precession, at these turning points, the Earth's positioning with the center of the galaxy is an exact alignment. Obviously, this indicates that the alignment itself is of fundamental importance, that the Earth and solar system's position relative to the galactic center has a penultimate effect upon the hyperdimensional physics of its systems. When we conjoin the galactic center, a flood of energy is received, energy that fundamentally changes the vibratory rate of all bodies of matter in its vicinity. And this is where this idea of a planetary ascension process comes into play. So if there's this wave of energy coming from the galaxy and coming into our solar system and affecting our planet, it would affect us on a very deep level and could accelerate whatever spiritual evolution process we are destined to experience. Back to Wilcock's introduction now. And therefore, we not only find this 26,000-year cycle in the slow wobbling of the Earth's axis, we can also find this cycle in the Sun. The psychic readings of America's greatest psychic Edgar Cayce made mention of a solar cycle that governed the passage of ages, and that was reaching its completion in the time period surrounding the turn of our millennium. And now science appears to have verified exactly what Cayce had stated over 65 years ago. A researcher by the name of Maurice Cotterell has discovered a series of sunspot cycles that are much longer in duration than the commonly cited 11-year cycle. Cotterell suggests that one particularly important sunspot cycle determines the exact periods between the magnetic polar shifts within the Sun itself. And remarkably, just as Edgar Cayce predicted, we can indeed find a precise 26,000-year solar cycle by simply adding 7 of these sunspot shift cycles together. The same is true of the length of the Mayan calendar when expanded by a factor of 5. So we can now observe this cycle in the galaxy, in the Sun, and in the wobbling motions of the Earth. But how does it all relate? What the research has borne out is the idea that the consciousness units are not static, but continually in motion, moving from one frequency of vibration to another. A psychic source identifying itself as Ra, which is the source of the law of one channel teachings, tells us that the larger the size of the consciousness unit in our own space-time, the slower it pulsates through the frequencies. And therefore the clock of our galaxy moves in roughly 26,000 year increments for all planets whose occupants live in 3D. Higher dimensional forms can visit us, but right now our Mother Earth is vibrating at a speed that allows her to be a host to those in the third dimension. So what all this really means is that the consciousness unit of the solar system and Earth, relative to its position in the galaxy, is about to move from the third level frequency of vibration to the fourth. The same harmonic mathematical principles of the consciousness unit can be demonstrated in the 25,920 year value for this cycle. When our cycle finishes its progress, there is indeed a sudden energy shift in the global grid, coupled with a frequency change in the planetary vibrations. Once this frequency shift has happened on the Earth as a whole, it will not continue to be viable for third-dimensional life as we know it for very much longer. The vibrations of many human beings will raise spontaneously as well, but what exactly does this mean? Well, this is a big mystery, right? Everyone has their own interpretation of that question. What these intelligences tell us is that we each have a personal vibration whose rate or speed is determined by our own relative level of spiritual growth. Therefore, those who have reached the green ray understandings of the fourth dimension in their own consciousness will spontaneously shift into this frequency level to later repopulate the newly transformed Earth. The immediate effects of this transformation will cause the entity to have a spontaneous disappearance from the others still in the third dimension. A similar frequency-induced human disappearance occurred in what has been called the Philadelphia experiment. So this was the main reason for the appearance of Jesus in the earth planes. He intended to demonstrate the understanding necessary for an entity to be compatible with fourth dimensional vibrations through phrases such as love thy neighbor as thyself and do unto others as you would have them do unto you. The understanding that he brought was for us to love and help others, plain and simple. To complete our training, he talked of what's referred to as rapture or ascension that would happen at the end of the cycle, and demonstrated this ascension himself in order to show a, quote, graduation from earth in this matter. That is why he gave us the phrase, as I do these things, so shall ye do them, and greater things, for I go unto my Father. Of course, the original meanings of those teachings have now been almost completely lost or altered. So this is part of the big picture reality of what is going on now, and why there is so much interest in Earth at this time from external, higher frequency civilizations. Convergence probes deeply into the physics behind the timing of this epic transformational event and gives us all the clues as to why it might occur much sooner than the full-blown Mayan calendar end date of 2012. Many others have read the book and are highly intrigued and even awed by the possibility that such an event could truly occur within our lifetimes, possibly within a year or less based on the available evidence and timelines. Thank you, and peace be with you in the light of everlasting love. David Wilcock. So that's what David had to say in 1999. Clearly this mass shift, this vibrational transformation that he envisioned has not happened in the timing or in the way that he seemed to suspect when he wrote that. We're well past 2012 now, and we haven't seen people suddenly disappearing or dematerializing. we haven't had this mass planetary type of event that many people speculating on ascension have discussed. I think it's important to understand that we each are going through our own personal spiritual transformation or evolution, and so looking at it in a planetary way is not necessary. We each evolve and elevate our consciousness as we go through our life experience. And when we come to the conclusion of a particular incarnation or lifetime, we're going automatically through an ascension process. We're letting go of that body, of that physical identity, and our consciousness is refocusing, it's shifting into what you could call the fourth density level, or the astral plane, the between lives realm. And thus, we're shifting into that perspective. And ultimately, at some point in our evolution, that perspective will be integrated or brought back up into the fifth density level, which in turn is integrated into even higher density levels, or levels of existence that are less differentiated from the divine source consciousness. Thus, there's no pressure or no need to worry about when these particular ascension events are occurring. We all ultimately move forward on our journey in whatever timing that may occur, as we attempt in our limited minds to relate it to this timeline of human life experience. If there were a planetary mass event, something like a cataclysm or a pole shift, something of that nature, where many people are concluding or ending their physical incarnation at the same time, it might appear as though there were some mass ascension where all the spirits are shifting their focus of awareness or their point of consciousness from the third density level up into the fourth density level. It doesn't mean that they're carrying the physical body with them. It just means they're carrying their memory of that physical identity into the fourth density level as they review and process those earthly experiences. For those that are interested in exploring metaphysics and spirituality further, I invite you to visit my own website, which is www.phinsights.com. For those that are interested in reading more of the writings from David Wilcock, including the materials that began as Convergence, you can visit his website, divinecosmos.com. Wilcock subsequently got a book publishing deal with a major publisher and is a best-selling author now with his books The Source Field Investigations, Synchronicity Key, and the Ascension Mysteries. I also have a book myself related to the subject of metaphysics and spirituality, focused more on basic spiritual laws that we can apply to our own lives, to our own personal experiences and our journey as a human being. That book is called Consciousness, Creation, and Existence, A Guide to the Grand Adventure. Here is what this book looks like. And you can find this on Amazon.com. For now, I would like to thank everyone for taking their time to view this video, to have the intention to evolve, to grow spiritually. I want to wish everyone a wonderful day. Namaste.